welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and as always, thanks so much for being here. I hope you enjoy the show. Well, we're going to highlight a location that's based in Hartford, Connecticut. It's the Mark Twain House and Museum, and I have the pleasure of having Emma Gerstein, the Living History Coordinator, and Bridget Lalama, the Retail Operations Manager, both women, as my guests today. And ladies, thank you so much for being here today. Such a pleasure.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do, what I start the show off with, is usually introducing the viewer to the guest. So why don't we start with you, Emma? Why don't you tell us about yourself? Take us back into your background.
Yeah, so my background is in theater as well as some small museum management. So I studied theater, I worked in a museum all throughout college, and now I'm here doing very specific theater at a museum with our Living History program, which brings to life the stories of Mark Twain's family and the people that worked here in his household on Farmington Avenue that helped maintain his lavish lifestyle, which allowed him to be so prolific in the 17 years he lived here.
Emma, did you think, now you're mentioning theater, did you grow up thinking that you were going to be an actress?
I absolutely did. I think from the age of about 12 onward, my mind was set on like Broadway. I graduated in the year 2020, so that kind of played a part in shifting my perspectives, but I'm very happy with where I've ended up here and the kind of art that I'm able to create at the Mark Twain House and Museum.
Now, you're mentioning also that the museum world was part of your life. Did you think that you'd end up at the Mark Twain Museum? Did you think that you'd be in the museum world?
I don't think that was ever specifically part of my plan. It was something that I had always been interested in growing up, mostly because I really enjoyed the costumes, and now a large part of what I do here is I create and piece together the historic costumes for our interpreters. But I grew up volunteering with my local historical society, Milford Historical Society, and I attended a historic women's college, Cedar Crest College, which has their alumni museum collection consists of mostly historic garments from the 1860s through to present day. So that kind of started to bridge the gap between my theatrical interest in loving to wear costumes and then learning about the history of the clothing that we now see as costume quite often. But I ended up at the Mark Twain House purely by chance. I came to visit one day, I took a living history tour, and by the end of it, I said, how do I get involved? And now, a little over a year later, here I am.
Great. Well, Bridget, why don't we start with you? Why don't you tell us about yourself? Take us back into your background.
Sure. So I have been with the Mark Twain House for about 12 years now. I was a college student when I started here, sort of stumbled into the position of historic interpreter, and wasn't actually sure how much I would like it. I hadn't really thought about museums as a future role, but through doing the work, I really fell in love with historic interpretation, fell in love with the story of Mark Twain and the house, and just kind of hung around the museum until they let me do other things. So eventually became assistant manager of interpretation for a while, and now I've shifted gears, so I'm looking more at the retail side of things in our museum store. So yeah, but I have spent pretty much all of my adult professional career at the Mark Twain House, so you could call me a Twainiac for sure.
And that's interesting. I saw that on the website. What is a Twainiac?
Ooh, I guess the definition would kind of change from person to person. I would say a Twainiac is the type of person, in the way that I would define myself, as I may not know what day of the week it is, but I can tell you what day Mark Twain got married. That's sort of how I would think about it. How about you, Emma?
In family conversations, you might not know what you're doing that day, but I can tell you what Mark Twain did on this day 100 years ago.
Isn't that interesting? Bridget, did you think that the museum world was going to be a part of your life when you were growing up? Did you want to work in that environment?
I'm not sure. When I think about what I wanted to be when I was younger, realistically, the first person that I wanted to be when I grew up was Indiana Jones. So in some ways that like it belongs in a museum line that he has kind of fits. But I don't think it was really until I came to work at a museum that it clicked for me, this is not just, a career path. This is really a calling to kind of be in this space, to be able to share the history and, help people find meaning in historic artifacts. So I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to do the work at a young age and really realize that it was my calling at an opportune time.
Now, Emma or Bridget, I'll let either of you or both of you answer this question. I think that people might be a little bit confused of Samuel Clemens and Mark Twain. Tell us about why he made that name his pen name. Who is Mark Twain to begin with? Either women, please feel free to answer that.
Yeah. Emma, I'll let you take the lead.
All right. Well, Mark Twain, the way I personally think of it, especially when I'm doing interpretive work, is that Mark Twain is the author, the humorist, the public persona, and then Samuel Clemens is the man, the husband, the father of 3 girls that he raised here in Hartford. So it's kind of public versus private. But most of the people in his personal life called him Sam. The people in the neighborhood of Nook Farm, where the house is, called him Sam for the most part, except his best friend, who for some reason still called him Mark Twain.
How about you, Bridget? What are your thoughts about Mark Twain?
I always think it's interesting, Mark Twain, the pen name, he takes it as a term from working on the riverboats. So as a leadsman, you'd be measuring the depths of the Mississippi River to make sure that this enormous steamboat you're piloting down it can travel safely through the water. There's enough clearance. And safe water was considered to be 2 fathoms deep. And so when they were in it, someone on the boat would shout out, "Mark Twain!" And a lot of people see this like, oh, it's a sign of good luck, good fortune, you're in safe water, this is a good feeling to have if you're working on a riverboat. What I think is interesting, though, is that Mark Twain, you're technically right on the edge, right? So you could very quickly run aground of a sandbar, you could hit a tree, log underground. So I think it's interesting that he picks this term that is really a little bit on the edge, a little bit boundary pushing, because you can see that in his writing, and some of his activism later on when it comes to anti-imperialism, that sort of thing. So I don't know if we could say for certain that is a deliberate choice that Mark Twain would have made, but I think it's something that we can kind of reflect on.
We have some pictures that we would like to show. There are several of them. They're kind of geared towards Christmas, and I know we're going to talk about 2024 as well. But if we could show some of those pictures and you can tell us what we're seeing, that would be great. Oh, here we go. What are we seeing here, ladies?
That is the conservatory in the home. They had a conservatory. They could have a little bit of spring or summertime all year round. They had some quite exotic plants in there. They were maintained by the family's gardeners. There was John O'Neill was one of them. I believe he's the one who we have a floriculture book that was given to him by, I believe, Livy, and we have some of his handwritten notes in that book about the kind of plants that they were maintaining there.
Next picture. Oh, here we go.
So this is the drawing room. So you can kind of consider it maybe the more formal living room area. This is where you would be welcomed in as a guest of the family when you were entering the home, most likely. But you can also see they have their Christmas tree up this time of year. We know that the Clemenses had a Christmas tree, though it was not a common holiday tradition at this point in America. It's a tradition that comes from Germany. So as more German immigrants came to the United States, it comes with them. So, but we know the Clemenses had one. So that's what you can see here.
This is a shot from way up in the third floor, the billiard room, which was kind of Mark Twain's man cave, if you will. It features his billiards table, as well as his workspace. He would do some of his writing there. And you can also see a slight hint of costume, perhaps a hint of the holiday magic that went on in their house, although I don't want to speak too much to that. I don't know the age of all of our listeners. But it was kind of his private space in a home where a good portion of it was quite public because he had a public persona to maintain. He and his wife would be entertaining guests, holding dinner parties quite frequently, but this was his space. And he penned some of his most famous novels there, including Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, The Prince and the Pauper, and A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court.
Oh, so this is the mantle of the fireplace in the schoolroom on the second floor. This is also where presents would be dropped off by Santa Claus on the night of Christmas Eve. Sam Clemens' three daughters, Susie, Clara, and Jean, this is where they would open their gifts on Christmas morning. So you can see three stockings for three little girls. And I want you to imagine, if you were to look behind where the camera is, just present palooza. One year, Clara gets a piano, they have books, just anything you could imagine a little girl wanting. It was most likely delivered on Christmas morning.
And I think there we go, we have one more.
This is the beautiful mantle and overmantle in the family's library. You can see some quite ornate carving there. The main feature of it is a crest. And on the mantle here, we see lots of chromolithograph Christmas cards, as well as snowflakes. And one of my personal favorite stories that has to do with this mantle is that we know that Samuel Clemens would have to tell his children brand new bedtime stories each night, using each of the bric-a-brac on the mantle in order to create the story as they went.
Wonderful. Well, great pictures. Tell us, they traveled to different parts of the world, but of course, we're talking about Hartford, Connecticut, of where this house is. Tell us about the history of the house. Why has it been renovated, and is the location to be used? Why that location?
Do you mean in the sense of why they chose to build their house there, or why it's a museum now?
Yeah, why is the museum there? Why has the choice been to keep the Hartford location as the main place for Mark Twain?
I think part of it has to be the architectural significance. I obviously wasn't around when the Mark Twain Memorial was founded, so I don't know off the top of my head the exact reason. But even from before it was completed, while it was still being built, it was compared to all manner of things, a gingerbread house, an oversized doll house, a cuckoo clock. So even from the very beginning, it stood out in Hartford. It's very striking. It's perched right upon the hill, and the Park River would have flown right next to it in Mark Twain's time. So it kind of almost became a landmark before becoming an actual historic place for the local community. And there is so much history within the house that, thanks to the wonderful restoration work has been done, a lot of the evidence of what it was like when they lived here, such as the Tiffany wall furnishings, a lot of that was still evident under the layers of modern furnishings. So it's a lot to work from just from the house itself, and then the fact that it was so significant to his life. His family lived here for a total of 17 years. It was where he and his wife raised their children together for the majority of their lives. And it was the place where he was kind of the most prolific. The most prolific period of his life was when he lived here in Hartford.
Okay, well, ladies, let's hold that thought. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You are tuned into Arts and Entertainment. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You matter.
You matter.
You matter.
And your words matter too.
Your words matter.
What you say in the hallways at school or in the student section at a game matters.
Words can be hurtful.
Words can be offensive.
Words can leave scars.
Words can also inspire.
Support and uplift.
You and your words.
Are they both important?
As a matter of fact, yes.
I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host, and as always, thanks so much for being here. Well, we're highlighting the Mark Twain House and Museum, which is located in Hartford, Connecticut. And Bridget, why don't we talk about the website first? I was spending a tremendous amount of time there. We talked about it before we went on the air. Tell us about it. It's chock full of information for the viewer. What will they find there when they go?
You can find all sorts of things on our website. So you can, find out general information about the museum, our operating hours, which are 9:30 to 4:30, 7 days a week this time of year. How you would come to visit and take a tour. But there's also great educational resources on our website as well. Information about Mark Twain and his family. There is a virtual tour of the historic house as well, which is annotated. You can find out lots of neat things about the house. Do a little prep work before a visit, possibly. We have a great series called Catching Up with the Clemenses, which is filmed with members of our curatorial and educational department. So you can learn a lot about what it would have been like to live and work in the Mark Twain house. And we also were lucky enough to be able to host writers of today come and speak about their books. So we have a lot of recorded lectures with modern day authors too. So all sorts of neat kind of programs you can look into. I should also say you can do a little bit of shopping online too. We just launched a new version of our online store. So I highly encourage folks to go check that out, especially if you're maybe looking for a little something for your holiday shopping. Lots of kind of neat items that you might not be able to find on Amazon or Target or, your typical store.
Well, it's a wonderful website. I hope that the viewer will get to go and see it because you have so much there that it will take a long time to kind of get through it. What does the future look like for 2024? Do you folks have a calendar that you follow throughout the year? I know Christmas is big, but what about the rest of the year? To either ladies, any thoughts on your part?
Emma?
Yeah, well, 2024 is undoubtedly a huge year for us. We're celebrating 2 anniversaries at the same time. So the house itself was completed in 1874. So 2024 will be the 150th anniversary of the house, the sesquicentennial, which is quite a big word, and we're all saying it an awful lot. And 1974 is when the museum actually opened to the public officially for the first time. So we're also celebrating the 50th anniversary of the museum itself opening. So we're going to have quite a lot going on in the next year. And I know, speaking as Living History Coordinator, we're going to have some exciting living history events happening. We're going to be debuting a new living history script. I'm not going to say who yet, but there will be a the first real addition to our living history lineup that we've had in a couple years. And we're also planning to do a fully fledged production of Mark Twain's eldest daughter, Susie's play that she wrote and performed originally in the house with her sisters and friends. It's called A Love Chase. So that's going to be on the lineup. We have her original script. We have photos of their original production. So we're going to try and recreate the costumes and as much of the staging as we can in the drawing room where we know that she and her friends performed it. So I'm very excited about that.
What are your thoughts, Bridget? Any thoughts about 2024?
Oh, just I echo. It's a really big year for the organization. We're so excited to be celebrating um, you know, these big anniversaries, and it's just, I mean, any year is a good time to come to the Mark Twain House, and tour, become a member. Just so many great educational opportunities.
And we'll be having our regular seasonal events as well. We'll have our October fall spooky time graveyard shift ghost tours. Those will be ongoing. We'll have more of our Christmas events. We've got more Christmas events coming up this weekend. We have our Gilded Age craft ornament workshop where you can learn to make a total of 4 Gilded Age ornaments, just like the family themselves would have decorated with. We have a lecture on how the Clemens family celebrated Christmases both at home in Hartford, but also when they were separated and traveling. And then we have our final night of performances of our brand new living history experience, Home for the Holidays, which is an immersive theatrical experience. The year is 1889, and you're calling on the Clemenses during the evening while they're getting ready for Christmas. So that'll be happening next year as well.
Just to mention living history, I think that probably the viewer has heard you say that more than once. What does that mean?
So on our site, it means that we have interpreters that are also trained actors. They're working from a script, and they are portraying or interpreting people that were part of Mark Twain's family, such as his wife Libby, his daughter Susie, or his best friend, the Reverend Joe Twitchell, but also some of the domestic staff that work in his household, such as their coachman, Mr. Patrick McAleer, an Irish immigrant, Katie Leary, Libby's lady's maid, who also worked for the family for about 40 years, as well as Lizzie Wells, one of their maids, and hopefully very soon again, we will have someone interpreting the family's butler, Mr. George Griffin. So we're working from primary sources, be it their own words from letters or memoirs, as well as other records that we have of their life here, and we're bringing them back to life in the house where they lived and worked with wonderful costumes.
Bridget, what I noticed on the website is that education is also something that is important for the house and museum. Now, you have tours for young people and things for adults. Is that something that's important for the house and museum to be involved with as well?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's really at the heart of our mission, to share the house with folks, whether it's on a tour or whether we're, doing a call like this over video to a school in Oklahoma to talk about Mark Twain and his writing. We want to, share the story of the house, share Mark Twain's story, with the hopes that we're kind of building connections between whoever our audience is, whether it's adults or children, kind of building those connections between the time that Mark Twain lived in and the present, because so much of what he wrote is still relevant today.
Emma, I also saw that the location is available for rentals. I don't think that people would think that the outside community could come in and use the facilities itself. Is that also an opportunity for people to see the home?
So rentals can include tours of the house. The rentals typically happen in our museum center. That's our main rental space. We have Hal Holbrook Hall. We have the space in our cafe. And actually tomorrow night we have a company is doing their Christmas party here, and part of the events that they have planned are special half-hour, first floor only living history tours. We can also offer just our standard general house tours as part of a rental. And you can find some contact information if you're interested in having a rental at our space on our website, marktwainhouse.org. We have a contact list. And you can find the information you need there for that, or to get it started. And there's been lots of rentals this holiday season. It's a great place to have a holiday party.
Bridget, we're starting to run out of time. Is there any closing thoughts that you have for the viewer about the house and museum?
I would just say, I know probably a lot of people who are seeing this, you may be local, maybe you've never been to the Mark Twain House, or you haven't been since you were a young student on a field trip. But I highly encourage you to come make a visit here if you can. This is a great time of year to visit. The house is decorated for the holidays in the way that the Clemenses would have decorated. But if you can't make it out, I encourage you to visit our website, take a look at some of our online resources, maybe do a little bit of shopping too. But you know, we're here, we're a resource, and we would love to be a part of anyone's kind of learning experience, I guess would be my final thoughts.
Emma, closing thoughts. We have just a little bit of time left.
I absolutely echo what Bridget said. It's a great place for a range of interests, from the history itself to the literature to the interior design. We currently have a wonderful exhibit, our annual exhibit for business or for pleasure, which is all about how Mark Twain and his family spent their summers. So there's just a never-ending rabbit hole you can fall into of something that interests you, no matter what part of the site you visit.
Well, ladies, I'd like to thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure and loved learning all about it.
Thank you so much for having us.
And I'm Deborah Gilbert. You've been tuned into Arts and Entertainment. I hope you have a super day today. In case you need to reach me, I'm at artsandentertainment@mail.com. Hope you have a super day. Thanks again for being here. I'll see you next time.